All set? Ready, sir? Okay, good evening, everyone. We've got a few items before we get to item number 6, which is the budget. The first 3 items Mr. Piccone will take. The first is indigent burial.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In 2017, I believe, could be 18, we passed an ordinance that authorized regulations regarding indigent burial. A little background, indigent burial is a responsibility of the city. In 2001, the state shifted the cost, the burden of indigent disposition to municipalities under section 9.15 of the Ohio Revised Code. And we, as I said, I think it's 2018, passed an ordinance authorizing regulations. Based upon my recent review of some of the materials regarding indigent burial, I would just ask that we codify in Chapter 944 the regulations that we passed, so that we have, the authority of an ordinance passed by council to help us process indigent burials. We get contacted from time to time by the nursing home, the Greenbrier Nursing Home primarily, and we've done 2 or 3 already this year. So it's really a housekeeping item, just to take the regulations and codify them. Really nothing's changed in the regs that you authorized 2 years ago. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I just have, I'm sorry, just a quick one. You have an actual dollar amount?
We put in not to exceed $725. I looked at some other city ordinances, and they were between $725, $750. We actually primarily use Repepi, more recently Bush Funeral Home in Parma, and they charge us $703 for a cremation. So we want to cap it, because we have an arrangement. It's a budgetary item. We know that we can have that 700-ish number or thereabouts, so that's why that's in there.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Very good question. Just for your information, I did a quick look over the weekend, just not very extensive Google search. I have services. It's called Lakeside Simple Cremation in Cleveland. They do a simple cremation for $9.95, and then the Cleveland Cremation Service, which is in Parma and in Strongsville, does what they call a simple cremation for $1,145. So we're below that in the rate that we've been paying to the provider. So if you would be in agreement with that, I'd ask you to just pass that in one reading next week.
Does council have
2 weeks?
2 weeks, yes. Does council have an objection to suspension on first reading? No? Okay.
Okay, the second item is the American Legal Codification. That is simply a housekeeping item. Every year, American Legal comes to us with a standard ordinance that they're updating our code with the ordinances that you've passed, and also update any references in our code that reference the Ohio Revised Code and any updates. So we do this on a yearly basis. So again, I would ask if you would suspend the rules and just do this in one reading at the next meeting.
Council have any objection to one reading? Okay.
And lastly, parking of commercial vehicles. You should have in your packet a memo written to you by the Chief of Police explaining the rationale for this. This ordinance was last updated in 2005, and the current wording does not allow for the basic alternative that the police have been running into, where someone is doing work in their yard where they have a commercial vehicle. They just move out of their driveway to cut their grass, plow their snow, whatever what have you, and then they put the vehicle back in the drive. We've had some enforcement, not recently of that, but we've had some enforcement of a commercial vehicle in a street for a period of time. So the police chief and Sergeant Zach came and addressed the administration and asked for an amendment to the ordinance. And it is simply one sentence in 351.13 at C, the last sentence that just basically says, in case of an emergency or to perform work or maintenance on a residential property, the vehicle can be out for a reasonable period of time in the street. Again, kind of a housekeeping item. If you would be so kind, we would like that suspended and passed in one reading also.
Is there any objection to one reading? Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Picorni. Item number 4 and 5 were presentations provided last council meeting with Chief Scharschmidt from the Police Department as well as Sergeant Green. Item number 4 is an agreement with the City of Strongsville regarding if we needed to use the City of Strongsville for housing with the jail. It's $150 a day, $155 if it's a county assigned prisoner there. And I think everything was covered by the chief and the sergeant last week. If you've got any questions, I can take them back to the chief or the safety director. But it was exactly the presentation that was provided last week. I'd ask for, what, 3 readings you comfortable with?
Yes, Councilman?
I did have a question. The chief was going to check on Berea, having an agreement with the Berea Police Department as well.
I remember you saying that, and I have not received that, though.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a busy day today, but I'll check for you and get back to you before the next council meeting.
Thank you.
Sure.
Councilwoman Everett?
Is this in addition to the one we're having with Parma? So we're going to have one with
Yeah,
Parma and Strongsville?
Parma's utilized as a primary, but if they're full, then we always want to have them fall
Right, so
back.
this is the secondary. So we are going ahead with Parma. This is the one that we've chosen as a secondary,
Them and as well as North Royalton.
North Royalton.
Yeah, both of those will be available to us with these agreements.
Okay, are we going to get a separate agreement with Royalton
Yes, we have not received theirs yet.
and Parma as well? We'll
Yeah.
have 3 different ones.
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, thank you.
And as stated last week by the chief, that, you know, Parma, since it's the municipal court over there, functions extremely well, much closer, and a good working relationship with them. So they're going to be the primary. And that would be item number 5. The same presentation was given last week by the chief and the sergeant. This is the agreement with the city of Parma. They were going to charge $135. They charge all other cities $135, reduce it to $125 because of our agreement to utilize the regional dispatch at the city of Parma. Yes, Mr. Corney pointed out, I did receive an email from Chief Scharschmidt today clarifying a difference between the North Royalton and the Parma contracts. With the Parma contract, the jail doctor is included in the price. If we do take a prisoner to the city of North Royalton, Dr. Feltoon's fee is not covered. That is an addition, and I'm not quite sure what that is. But when the North Royalton contract comes in, I'll make sure that's part of the contract.
Does council have any other questions?
If not, Madam President, I'd ask for 3 readings on each one. Excellent, thank you. Okay, that leads us to item number 6, which we start budget discussions, and right off the bat, I'm going to ask for some flexibility. There's been a bit of a change. Director Patton is not available today, so we had scheduled him to come in and discuss the service department. What we'll do is move him back with the police and fire. The same date they come in, we'll schedule the service department that day. And the first up this evening is our Economic Community Development Director, Joe Sebas. And the format that we're going to use, I'm sure Katie will explain it to you. Katie, yeah, she's going to give you a rundown of the finances, the line items, and so forth. Mr. Sebas is here to talk about it and highlights or answer any questions that you may have that pertain to his department. Is that pretty much the goal?
We can start with Joe and then Trish and then highlight some other things.
Yeah, Joe's up first.
Goes up first, so economic development, it starts on the bottom of page 3, on to page 4. You're gonna see here just essentially the wages for Joe and also for Christine, his assistant. She is a part-time employee. And then just some minor expenditures related to their department, very little. Yeah. So, of course, council has to approve when we go out for any type of grants for the block grant or any others. So Joe can explain what's maybe on the docket for
Yeah,
this year.
if there's anything coming forward to me that we want to consider applying for, and there's matches involved, you know, those are the times we come to council and ask for, that's where those resolutions of support are, to make sure you guys are all on board and support what you're doing. And you know that there is a, you know, there is a match tied to that grant. So currently, right now, you know, we're just starting up the new year, and we just got a few minor applications done, but there's no match requirements for them yet. And coming up will be supplemental again, black grant. We won't know how we did on last year's apps until probably February, late February, early March. But that's the only time we're ever asking for assistance, is if there's matching funds to move forward on a project that's good for the city.
So really, it's at that time you would make the additional appropriations, which are generally almost always offset either entirely or almost entirely by the grant reimbursement.
Anything for, I almost called you councilman, anything for Director Stevens?
I have a quick question.
Councilwoman?
Seeing that we just got this, if we have questions after tonight, can you come back,
If you
or?
have questions anytime during the course of the year, any of the directors would be happy to answer, but of course.
I have nothing now.
Okay. Are there any other questions from council? Okay.
Yeah, the departments that we have coming in tonight are really, the vast majority of them are salary. There's not much other expenses that are in these departments. It's staffing and so forth. So up next, I believe we have senior center. Is Tricia in here, Joe? Would you send her in?
So the senior center is going to start on page 8 at the bottom. You're going to see a pretty similar budget to the same thing that was passed in March of last year. Pretty much, you know, we did do a cost of living increase, but then same for the part-time people. Anything that's really of, it's mostly the same. So for the one thing I want to point out, and you'll see this in all the departments, is the fleet maintenance. It's going to show as 0, because at the very end, I'll cover that before we finish today. Fleet maintenance is charged at the end of the year. We charge each department what was spent in their department. So we're not budgeting there, we're budgeting in the fleet maintenance fund. So, but that is it. You know, there's really no changes to her budget, but I know she has quite a few grant opportunities.
So just for clarification, we want to make sure that full-time is 2 full-time employees. So when you see the
Yes.
full-time here, that's a combination of two salaries, 2 employees. And then we ask Mrs. James to come in and give you some highlights of either 2020 or going forward, what to anticipate in 2021. How are we doing, Trish?
Things are really well. We, in total, for last year, we were able to, with our pantry boxes that we delivered that had 5 meals each and our additional meals plus our regular meals, we were able to serve 51,725 meals. And we don't intend, or we're hoping that it won't be exactly the same, but if we're on the same path, we intend to do the same thing, which is the produce boxes, the pantry boxes, hot meals. And then in addition, we have partnered with the the Food Resource Hunger Network, and we're getting breads, bakery, and assorted produce every week, and probably about 100 to 150 pounds. And then we're also, with the same organization, getting 30 hot lunches served from the West Side Market Cafe, and we are earmarking those for isolated seniors, people in houses, medically compromised and financially insecure. We also got a grant, which you already know about, the $25,000 grant from the state, and that's for coronavirus relief. I think extra things that we're doing, which we put into the transportation. We're presently being outfitted with plexiglass cough barriers, and so with that, with what's left over, we might put that also for additional food if necessary. And then lastly, the county gave us another opportunity to get some money in mid-December. They started a new fund called Adult Development, because we were making wellness checks. We were doing activities online. We were doing extra things in the newsletter. We were making phone calls and check-in. And so they were going to pay us, and we backbilled to March. Now, I just put in the bill last month, and if we get paid for the whole thing, that would be $24,879. So that's where we are. We plan on just sticking with the system.
Any questions, Madam President?
Council have any questions?
At this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We also are not going to move Mr. Tal, the Recreation Director. I'll give his summary of what he's looking forward to in 2021, and Katie, you can do the finances.
So we're going to budget for,
What page?
if you are on page 3, the Recreation Department, there is just going to be the salaries for Mr. Tellerico and also for Lisa Serino, who is his assistant. That's all you're going to see. The other portion of it is its own fund, which begins on page 7 and then goes on to page 8, titled Parks Maintenance. We have basically copied the budget that was passed last March in anticipation of what may or may not happen. It can always be pulled back. But we are going to be optimistic and have the same amounts budgeted. So that would include for swimming pool attendance, concession attendance, baseball, lifeguards, all of the sports.
As in 2020, we need to be flexible with the Recreation Department. We are going forward, as Director Iconis had stated, and budgeting as if it was a normal recreation year. As last year, we'll take guidelines from the Cuyahoga County Board of Health as well as the state regarding safety issues. But what we have planned is starting on March 1st, Director Tal has planned online and walk-in baseball, softball signups. He's preparing to go forward with the opening of the swimming pool and the water park. They're in the process now that our pool manager's in the process of getting commitments from lifeguards and securing their willingness to work this summer if the pool opens up. This spring, we will open up the bocce ball courts, the pickleball courts, the sand volleyball courts, tennis courts, as well as we're still discussing the playgrounds. We will provide some signage that tells any of the participants they're at their own risk. We will still have some internal discussions when we get some guidelines about the cleanliness and how often it's cleaned. We hope to utilize some of the recreation employees this year to help with the sanitization and so forth. There is no spring soccer in 2021. However, Mr. Orcutt is running a free Munchkin soccer clinic on Mondays, April 12th through May 17th, from 6 to 7:10. And I think we went over that. We've also, instead of us providing 2 outdoor movies, we have gone into, we've combined with the city of Seven Hills and Parma to show 5 movies at Byers Field every Thursday in the month of July. The time is to be determined, and we'll keep you updated with that. We are in the process of discussing and seeing if we can get 3 concerts scheduled for the gazebo. We normally do 5, but this year we'll do 3, so Mr. Tow's in the process of discussing options with groups that might be interested. And then at this time, there's no secure date when we will resume normal inside the theater rental activities such as yoga and Zumba. So that's what Mr. Tow's got planned for 2021. And of course, like I said a couple of times, you know, it will be dictated by the County Board of Health as well as the state of Ohio. But we are hoping and planning for the best and making plans that everything will be full go.
Council have any questions about the recreation budget?
And that leads us into, we've got 2 that Director Iconis will cover. One is her finance department, as well as my office, the mayor's office. Are you coming forward then too?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, I just want to give a general overview, even starting on the first page. I know fire and police were going to have their own meeting, but just to let you know, this is also mimicking very closely the budget that was passed in March, which included some additional staffing, which was approved last year, but with COVID, they were not hired. So we've kind of stuck with the same plan that the chief had wanted to try, so he can explain all of that to you. Then, same with fire. One thing I do want to point out are the actual overtime numbers. We had budgeted a little over $300,000 in police. They ended up at $367,000, but that is a great departure from the previous year, which was in the $700,000 range. Same with fire. They were budgeted at $330,000. They actually came in under budget. Also a great departure from the previous few years. So that is something we were very proud of. Safety, that's going to be our safety director. I'm sure he's going to be at one of the meetings. We went over recreation. Building department is going to be Dennis's staff in here. Same thing, most of them, it's mostly just salaries. They do have some fees now included for building department software, which they're implementing, which will be a great help. And then we have some engineering fees that apply to that department. We went over economic development. Then on 4th page, you'll see utilities. Here again, we're seeing a bit of a decrease as realizing what our contracts that we put in place had starting to show. The mayor's office, we have the mayor's salary, we have his assistant's salary, and that's about it. They really don't have a lot. We have a couple dues and fees that are common for most mayors' mayor's offices. They join the Mayor and City Managers Association, municipal league, things of that nature. Anything you want to comment?
No, those are the 2 main organizations. I think that they're very helpful. They meet once a month. Right now, everything's been virtual. It's networking, but it's also the opportunity to discuss activities and what's going on in other cities, do a comparison. I think that it's, at least to me, been extremely helpful. The dues are very reasonable. I don't think there's anything else that really jumps out.
No.
Councilwoman?
Yeah, I just have a couple questions. I'm a little I'm having trouble following
Okay.
completely.
Okay.
You know, with just looking at columns of numbers and, you know, and this is really important, you know, it's our
Yeah.
fiduciary responsibility. This is our number one thing here. So I'm sure I'll have questions in the future, but just looking quickly, how do you do your medical? Because I just wrote the departments we went through, it looks like it was either one full-time or two full-time people. The numbers went 11,000, 19,000, 33,000, 56,000.
So I would get to that towards the end on page 9. So we have a health insurance fund now. Because we're self-insured, we're not paying out a premium for each employee. So throughout the year, we're applying these costs into this health insurance fund, and then we distribute them to the departments as they were used.
So how do you do it then with, if I want to get insurance, the code allows me to go on the city's insurance? What,
As an employee.
as an employee, it's in the code, I can ask to be and pay for it, obviously. So what's the cost of insurance for an employee that's not covered, a part-time employee? And I don't believe that applies to part-time. If I remember correctly, it's an
I don't
elected
believe that's
official.
Now, my understanding is part-time, if we offer part-time, it has to be offered to every part-time employee. I was approached a couple of years ago by a part-time employee and decided against it. It was going to be too much money because to offer to one, you have to offer to all.
To all.
Yeah.
But
And
I think it's the elected official, if you're an elected official or a part-time director. That, because we at one time had, the vast majority of our directors were part-time.
Right.
I
my
mean, we had like
understanding-
one full-time director, and then council could buy in if they so chose to. So,
I've never been familiar with that.
yeah, it's in there.
Well, if you point that out to us, we definitely would review it, because when it was reviewed for me a couple of years ago, they said that the most important aspect when you offer insurance is that if you offer it to one person, part-time or full-time, it has to be consistent across the board. So if we offered it to any part-time employee, every part-time employee in the city would be eligible for it.
And what would be a COBRA then? What's your COBRA
So
cost?
that's what I was going to say. I do have several former employees who still pay COBRA. So Medical Mutual, who is our carrier, they give us the yearly COBRA rates based on if it's a single-family employee, and that is what the people on the COBRA plan are paying. And those are the numbers we use as the percentage for contributions, which are in certain collective bargaining units. But as far as everyone else internally, because we're self-insured, you know, I'm not $200 a month to Medical Mutual every month, and that's it. The city pays the actual cost if I were to go to the doctor, up until my copay and my, deductible. So then all of that's parked, and you'll see that we are actually a lot under budget from what was expected by the carrier for last year. And then we disperse it to each department as it was used. If that makes sense.
I think maybe further clarification too is it all depends on if it's a single plan or a family plan.
It does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And it works
But,
much
I mean, it's
differently.
such a large, the 4 departments tonight have 1 or 2 full-time people. And we went from, and I just wrote down the numbers as I was looking here. 1 department was 19,000, 1 was 11, give or take, 11,725. So really 12, but 19,000, 12,000, 56,939, so 57,000 for 2 full-time employees.
Can you tell me which department you're in?
I don't know. What have we, let's go through, it's, like I said, I wasn't following well because it's a little difficult here for me, and I apologize for that. Economic development we started with, right?
Mhm.
So that is 19,168, so that's at 19,000. What was the next one? Recreation? Or mayor's court?
So the budget was 19,168, that would be based on the COBRA rate, but the actual charges for 2020 were 12,950.
Right,
We budgeted the same amount to be conservative because we don't know if we're going to be
Right.
higher or lower because we are self-insured, that fluctuates.
right.
So
That's why I went with that's why I wrote down the 19,
Okay,
because
so
that's what your budget.
That's one employee on the insurance.
And that's one. Okay, and then what was the next?
Senior
Mayor's
center,
court?
if you'd like to
Senior
go.
center was two.
What page is that on? Okay. Senior center. That one's 56,939 budgeted for this year, 48 last year, and your expenses were 15 or 16.
So those are the actual.
Right.
Last year, we didn't have a second employee on the plan the full year.
Okay,
So now this is taking into consideration 2 employees on the medical.
so 2 at 19 is 40, 38.
But that, it depends on if there's single, employee spouse, family plan, the COBRA rates are different for each of those.
Okay,
And we're basing our estimations on the COBRA rates,
okay.
which are given to us by Medical Mutual.
So now, okay, let's then go to the, I have an 11 and a 33. What would 11 be? Who would that be? What do we do next?
That might be rec department, because I think we only have one full-time person on healthcare.
What page is rec department? I'm sorry. 7?
Oh, page 3,
Page three.
recreation. We only have one person there that is on medical.
And that is,
It was 11,000 budgeted. Now, I believe we had 2 people. We moved that second person into another department. So now we have one person. So we're budgeting the 5862. It's a single, but the actual charges last year were 74.
right. But if there's one full, so what's 19,000? 2 people? I'm just trying to figure out what,
I can send you the rates. I don't have everyone's names in front of me.
because there's
I
such
can't-
a disparity.
Well-
You know, and we're only talking about 1 or 2 people.
Well, we have 4 different plans so there's really 8 different plans. So I can't disclose to you who has what.
Well, I
plan,
don't,
which-
that's not the,
But,
I don't care
so
who
there are
has what.
different rates for each one, whether they're in the 80-20 or in the 90-10. So then in each of those, there's 4 subgroups, which are family, single, employee, child, and employee spouse. And all of
Okay.
those are different rates. So there's,
So looking at what I wrote down here, this would be 4 different rates, 19, 11, 56, and 33, and now we're at 5, so.
well, I'd be happy to send you the COBRA rates, and I can show you the breakdown of the employees per, but it's pretty standard calculation. We don't have anybody that's come onto insurance this year that was not on previously.
Mhm. Okay.
And we actually didn't have an increase in any of our administrative. I think we're probably, because we performed so much below last year, I think we're going to continue to go down. They also have a plan to implement some other strategies in the summer before, when we go into our next collective bargaining, offering an HSA to employees, which can be a large cost savings and has a lot of incentive for them as well. So. But I can send you all the COBRA rates if you're interested in seeing what they are.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Great.
Councilwoman Everett?
A quick question. If there's an employee that has a spouse that's employed and they can get insurance through their employer, do we not cover that spouse? Like they have to get their own insurance and then,
No.
so we can, even if they have insurance through their company or can get it, if it's cheaper to do it with us, we cover them too?
Correct, and so that it will have to be part of collective bargaining. We can't make that.
No, I'm just
choice.
saying about anybody in general, not just the.
Oh, it's up to the employer. So here, we've always traditionally allowed employee spouses. If we want to put in that exclusion, we have to negotiate it in our collective bargaining with police, fire, and service and have that approved before we are allowed
Before we
to
can do it
that.
for anybody else?
That's correct.
Okay.
And it is something that we have talked about.
Because I know a lot of employers do that. And if they do take their spouse, then they have to pay more on more of their part.
Yeah, exactly.
And are we increasing what the employees are paying? I know we talked about that before,
So
that their percentage was going to go up, but didn't hear
the
anything.
percentages did not change for police, fire, or service. Those will have to be negotiated. And because we did not increase theirs, we did not increase City Hall as well, so that we're fair across the board.
Okay, thank you.
But believe me, there will be a lot of discussion around it heading into negotiations for 2023.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Are there any other questions from City Council?
Not at this time.
Can I point out a couple good things, though? Just want to, we're finally starting to see the decrease in our bank fees that we're paying because we've condensed. It's taken a lot longer than I expected to go from 5 bank accounts down to 2. So we are almost at that point. Also, want to point out that we have really encouraged employees, and in finance also, we're using our credit card when there are no fees applied for reoccurring payments. We've done a great program so we can actually put our entire trash bill on it. And we just received our rebate for 2020, and we got $18,000 back, which I was happy with. That's always a nice little chunk of money. Also, all of our copier leases are up. We purchased the copiers, so now we'll just be paying for copies. No longer stuck with something and then having nothing in the end because we leased it. Also, our accounting software, there's been a huge savings, and we get a free computer this year. But otherwise, it really is a very similar budget to what was passed in March of last year, only because we don't know, what's going to happen. But also would like to point out, we did finally, we're getting set up in Rita's system. Everything there is a go. We're going to be getting our first distribution in this February. It'll be pretty substantial, and just from my point of view, I'm very impressed with their software, with their reporting capabilities, and forecasting they'll be able to give us once we get further into the year. And then once we're open to the public, we'll get to the point where we can take walk-in residents like we used to, because we have that ability through their software. Vic and I both worked for a city where we did our own collection, so we're familiar with doing returns for residents. So when we're open, hopefully we'll be able to get back to doing that also.
Councilman?
We have one question, Katie.
Yes.
Are we closed out with CCA at this point? Is everything reconciled?
Yes, so all of the data extracts have been sent to Rita. There are some kinks they're working out with some files that CCA had not processed that Rita had thought they did. So I think we're pretty close to being right where we need to be.
Do you have an estimate of how many files we're talking about?
It wasn't a tremendous amount. We'll just put it that way. So, but they're all caught up now.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Madam President, moving on, we'll be prepared with police, fire service. I'm also going to ask Dan Bender, our engineer, to come in and discuss capital projects, update you with the roads for the next budget discussion. We will also have to you before that date. I think Madam President, you forwarded 8 or 10 questions regarding the budgets. We'll have that to you. We just went over it this morning. I think there's about 1 or 2, maybe 3 questions that we want to refine a little bit and refine our answers a little bit and get that to you then before the next discussion. And then as you see, and I appreciate all the input from everybody, we're scheduled to be able to do the 3 readings, have it done before the end of March too. And as always, as you take it home, you've got any questions, I know I speak on behalf of Katie. Her door's always open, my door's always open. If you give us a heads up, we can come in and talk to it as council as a whole, whatever you prefer.
And in the meantime, if council has any questions, you could forward the questions either through our clerk, so they get to the administration. Similar to what I did, I forwarded some questions, and I'll be addressing those during the budget hearings. So if you guys come up with anything, like I said, you can go ahead and then they could be addressed on the floor, and then the administration can have time to get the information ready before the meeting.
Just to point out, as you're looking through this, sorry, one other thing, as you're looking through this general administration, it's 1,790, it's on page 6. This is where we've centralized a lot of the costs that had been previously distributed, sometimes not accurately, to departments, the copier amounts, the telephone amounts broken out. So here's where we're centralizing that. Software licenses, indigent burials, bank fees, cleaning supplies, central purchasing. We've tried to go with the central purchasing so that we're getting the best pricing we can, and each department is not just purchasing their own trash bags and own paper towels. You know, we're getting the best price that we can. So all of those are applied in that area rather than so much in each separate department. So.
Council have any other questions? No? Okay. Mayor?
I have nothing further, Madam President.